and welcome to the Best Fleets to Drive For podcast. I am Mark Morrell, co-creator of the Best Fleets to Drive For program. I'm joined today, as usual, by Trish Bethel, our Best Fleets program manager, and our guests for this episode are Jetco, and a company that I'm always interested in learning more about. And we have got today Kyle Kristynik, the president, and Amanda Schuier, director of employee engagement, to talk about the things that Jetco is doing that nobody else is doing. And that is my teaser because they've got a lot of cool things that they do. So to get started with, let's look at sort of a quick overview of who Jetco is, what you do, and where you go. So Kyle, tell us a little bit about the company.
Sure. So Jetco Delivery, we were founded in 1976. It was actually three brothers that started the business back in the 70s, and started with a couple trucks, like you hear a lot of companies do, and worked their way up. Right. We are Houston based. We now have facilities in the Pasadena area, down in Freeport, along the coast, as well as up in Dallas. So overall, we're about 100, and depending on the week, about 140 to 160 trucks running, and we've got a fleet of close to 400 trailers and chassis. We do living in Houston. We do a lot of port drayage in and out of the Port of Houston. We do a lot of van work across the state. We do also we have about a third of our business is what we call open deck. So that could be anything from your normal 48 to 52 foot flatbeds, all the way up to big 13 axle heavy haul. So moving big oil field equipment. Obviously, we've got a lot of energy work here in the Texas region. So one of the things that's a little bit unique about us is that we keep our assets are mostly a local and regional group. So we've grown a lot. It's been quite a ride, but things like this is what's helped make us better. So I'm always happy to engage in things like this and learn from other companies as well.
Okay, excellent. How long have you been with the company?
So I started in 2012. So wow, going on 12 years now, which is hard to believe. So my background was, I'm a CPA by nature. So I came in as the CFO and took over the presidency role in 2015, and it's been quite a ride since then.
Okay, excellent. And Amanda, how long have you been with the organization?
So I started with Jetco in February of 2022. Been in trucking since 2006, and actually my great-grandfather owned a trucking company. So kind of in it by blood, although I didn't intend to go into it. My college degrees in journalism and Spanish, but I just happened to fall into a role in the Kansas City area in trucking, and fell in love with the people, quite honestly. Like that's what got me hooked in the trucking industry.
Wow, that is a background I do not come across very often.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Excellent. Yeah. So one of the things that came up through your interview, and I had noted this in past years when I've done Best Fleets interviews with Jetco, is something called the Jetco Way, and that comes up over and over throughout the interviews that we do with you. So talk to us a little bit about what that is, how it came about, and why it's sort of such a significant part of the organization.
Sure. So the Jetco Way dates back close to a decade now, and really the beginning of it was what we have is, all trucking companies have. We have a lot of drivers and a lot of people that have been in the industry, but been across many companies where in general people do things differently, right? We're all in transportation, but kind of everyone has their own way of doing things a lot of times. And what that led to for us was it made it harder for us to hold our team accountable if they didn't really understand how we expected them to do it at Jetco. Like, we appreciate that this is how you may have learned it at ABC Trucking, but at Jetco, this is the way we do it. And what we realize is that myself and some of the other people sitting in the office, we didn't always know the best way to do things. We're not, you know, like I said, I'm a CPA by nature. I'm not, I didn't grow up driving a truck like like most of our experts did out in the trucks. And so what we did was we kind of took the notion of an employee handbook and turned it upside down and said, what we want our drivers to tell us what are the best ways of doing things. And basically what we did is we compiled all of that and almost made it a best practice manual for our drivers and said, look, we're not, you know, some lawyer in the ivory tower is not going to tell you what, you know, what's the best way to, you know, crank your dolly legs up or whatever the case might be. We want you to tell us, and then we're going to jointly agree that this is the best way to do it. This is now the Jetco way. So what that evolved into was a whole handbook of things that our drivers wrote that said, this is what we agree to as the best way to do something. And thus what that did on our side and from our, you know, from our operations group and our safety group was kind of that's the standard now. So if we see people doing things outside of that, then we can go to them and coach them and say, look, this is how we do it in the Jetco way. You are not doing it the Jetco way. You know, let's do it. Let's do it the Jetco way. So it was kind of a way to not only just combine best practices, but help hold our team accountable. And really, you know, from my background in the audit side, it gave us something to audit how we were performing. And it was
really interesting.
One of the funniest stories. Yeah, one of the funniest stories. I mentioned dolly legs on purpose because one of the early stories was we had gentlemen who were instead of holding and cranking their dolly legs, they were just hitting it and it was turning. And one of them popped up and broke his nose. And so out of that idea, you know, that was another one of the things that kind of led us to that. We need one way of cranking our dolly legs. Everyone's going to do it the same way to make sure they're doing it safely every single time. So that's where the whole, let's get all the best practices together and we're going to make that the Jetco way. And we started with our drivers, and then we realized very quickly the value on the office side as well. So everyone in the office, we have a Jetco Way office manual, which means if you're going to book a load, we're all going to book it the same way every single time. That kind of principle, and part of that was going to our drivers and saying, guys, if we're going to hold you to these standards, we're going to do the same thing inside the office. We're going to make sure that we all doing things the best way possible all the time.
So it's not that uncommon for large organizations to have a set of standard operating principles that they use for all of their different business processes. It's really uncommon for a company your size to have that. I don't think I've come across anybody else who's documented it that much. And particularly going to the drivers and sort of saying how to do that and having that collaborative experience of figuring it out together, that must have been quite a bit of work to put that together.
It was many months.
I imagine it's also something that started small and has been evolving and growing since then. So it's probably way bigger now than it was before. So do you recall, were there specific things that you started with? Like, did you say, was it dolly legs, for instance, or was it, you know, how to do an inspection or something like that you were doing? Or was there a larger list of things?
All the above. So what we did was we laid out about 6 or 8 of our main topics of areas that we wanted to hit. In each of those 6 or 8, we had one leader, and they built a team to help them create those sections. So I'll give you an example. The group that I led personally was around unsafe driving conditions. You know, for instance, things to do in inclement weather or things like that. And so it was my job to build a team to help me write the best practices. So I went and engaged with drivers and said, you know, who all would be interested to be on this group? And we sat down a lot of times early in the morning before they were out on the road. So it could have been 5:30 in the morning. We'd gather in the conference room and we'd hammer through all the things that we thought were pertinent to driving in unsafe conditions. And we had, again, six or eight of those groups that got together for a several month period. And you know, there were multiple, once we got all of our drafts, there were multiple drafts and multiple editings, but it all came together. And what was really neat to see was who stepped up to lead in those situations. which drivers were willing to come in and be a part of it, which office people. One of our things was we wanted a cross-functional group. So we didn't want just intermodal drivers on one team. We might have wanted a van guy or a bobtail guy mixed with a CSR, from the office. So it wasn't just drivers. We had a cross-functional team that were in there putting the bullet points together per se under each section.
That's really, really interesting. That gives you a standard that you can work with when you're doing performance reviews. It gives you a foundation for like driver scorecards. It also, I imagine, has to help when you're hiring new people as well, because you've basically got a blueprint of where they need to get to.
Absolutely. The orientation integration process of a new driver, the expectations are very clear from day one, that this is how we expect you to do things. And obviously the book itself has evolved. It's now virtual. Right now it's all, it's on their tablets where they can keyword search things if they need to. It's much better. We used to have like literally 3-ring binders, right? Not that long ago. And so it's made it easier and easier to try to shorten the learning curve for drivers as they come on to Jetco. Again, we like to say, at Jetco, we're not for everyone. Not every driver is going to fit here. But those ones that really buy into the culture, we want to do what we can do to shorten their learning curve as quickly as possible. And the other thing with it, we tell every new driver, every new hire that comes in is that, here's our Jetco way, understand it. But then if there's things that you see that we think we can improve on based on what you've seen, then bring that to us and we will evolve the document. The document's a living, breathing document that's evolving all the time. We'll add new safety alerts to it, or we'll adjust things in there when needed. If better ideas come to the table, we'll make those adjustments.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's a really good foundation. And it does kind of lead into one of my other questions. You're talking about onboarding new drivers, and you said you want to shorten the learning curve for them, but at the same time, you don't shrink the orientation. You have every driver doing a 2-week drive along, which is got to be sort of a pretty intense process. Talk to us a little bit about how you do the onboarding there.
Yeah, there is a bit of a some people have called it a bit of a boot camp mentality, but the reality is we just want them armed with everything they need before they get behind the wheel driving for us. And again, we're very upfront during the interviewing process what the expectations look like. But I think one of the biggest things that we've done the last year or so, and this has really evolved out of us learning from our drivers, from what they've seen, and from some of the other companies in your programs, but kind of our shift in how we brought technology into play with it. And I think I'm going to let Amanda kind of step in and talk you through that a little bit, because that's become a big piece of this as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, like hearing Kyle articulate everything there is literally exactly why I wanted to be a part of Jetco. So it's really interesting, and like I feel so lucky that I'm now a part of it, because being in the industry as long as I have, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, to be totally honest. And so like now that I get to be a part of it, I think is just really cool. And to your point, Mark, I think that there are not a lot of, smaller companies that do a lot of the things that we do. And I think that's what makes us, really unique. So, one of the things that I've been working on since I started is really that orientation and onboarding, process, and really what that looks like, from a new employee perspective. And so I think, the training that we do with our drivers, kind of like Kyle said, getting them, started is really important. But we've also adapted a little bit of a hybrid kind of orientation in that we do some training in advance. And so I think that's a really good way for them to really start to understand the Jetco culture, right? So they're doing some assignments, through our LMS in advance. And so by the time they show up to orientation, we've kind of already set that expectation. You know, we're not just, you know, a company that's going to throw you into orientation and get you out and going. You know, we're setting that expectation that there's going to be ongoing safety training, you know, there's going to be ongoing events, and, you know, we do it via our tablets and technology and live team meetings, you know, whatever we can do to kind of get the team engaged from the start, I think, you know, really sets that expectation. And I think for drivers, that's a good feeling, right? So I have a background in driver recruiting, and the stories I could tell you that I've heard from drivers, you know, oh, my recruiter said XYZ, like I've heard crazy stories. And so I think, you know, now that I oversee recruiting at Jetco, I think, you know, we focus on honesty, integrity, setting the expectation, you know, as best we can. And I think we do a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, interesting. And part of that, I think, is that you also compensate people for that. So it's not like you're putting them into an orientation where they're not really making any money, so they want to get out of it as quick as possible, or they're not doing any of their ongoing stuff because they're not getting paid for it. So you kind of treat them like professionals and compensate them for their time, and they end up actually doing the stuff you want them to do. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. If you've got guys and girls coming in that are not properly taken care of during that time period, what you see are people that will just space out. I mean, we want people engaged. Part of that is making sure we're rewarding them for their engagement during that whole process. And that you know, the mentality is that there's no reason to shortcut this in any way. I'm already being compensated for properly. Let's make sure I really understand it before I get behind the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. One of the other things that's often an issue for drivers, and you have a different approach to it, is handling challenges with shippers, whether it's waiting time or unpleasant yards, things like that. So what stuck out for me when I was looking through your information is how you do lunch and learns at your client locations. Which I don't see very many people doing. They're often very kind of separate. You have the salesperson who will go out there once in a while and give a cursory look through the yard, and then that's about it. And then it's really up to drivers to figure it out on their own. So talk to us a little bit about this idea of doing a lunch and learn at the client location.
Yeah, so we obviously encourage our drivers to give us feedback if they see things that are not going well at a location. Obviously, it can't be at every location, but we do encourage feedback and have ways for them to do that. But yeah, the flip side of that is, what are we doing in the office to go out and engage with our clients more directly about the things that we need, you know? So for us, it's kind of a twofold thing, you know. We want to go tell our story and make sure that our clients understand who we are and how we do things and what we can do to help them. But at the same time, I'll tell you, about half of my presentation has to do with educating our clients on the challenges that we're facing in this industry as truck drivers. And so that is a lot of times, you know, I'll go through my first spiel kind of talking about who we are, and you'll see some glassy eyes. But then when you really start engaging about some of the challenges that we're dealing with as an industry, specifically challenges the drivers are dealing with, that's when they really get engaged. You know, when we have pictures in our presentation that show drivers. This was an actual picture from one of our drivers. It was in a Chicago warehouse in the dead of winter. They were in a caged off area, you know, no heating inside this warehouse, and they sat there for 3 or 4 hours. And one of the big things I tell every single client that I go into is that, you know, we fired that client. We will never do work with them again because of how they were treating our drivers. And I said, look, if you want to get precedent as far as our capacity goes, treat our drivers right. You know, especially, you know, you look at during the post-COVID craziness that happened in our industry, when a lot of the shippers were, you know, begging for capacity. You know, I know who the trucks went to. The trucks went to those people that were, you know, they were waiting with a water bottle, or, you know, had a nice place for them to go. And, you know, we've had, to be perfectly honest, I mean, we've had clients here in Houston in the dead of summer that said drivers couldn't leave their trucks, but they also couldn't have them idling either. Had to have them turned off. That's not safe. And so we would go in and talk to those clients about, until you fix your problems, we're not coming back. And so, it just gets back to, walking the talk. One of the things I tell all the new hires, I try to meet with every new driver that comes in is that, you may hear a lot of companies that may talk the talk, but we're going to walk the walk. And if we're not, here's my cell phone. You let me know. So every driver has my card, my cell phone, and that's just the way we do business.
So it's not uncommon for fleets to talk about how they're sort of taking a hard line with their shippers and with their customers when times are good, and there's certainly that period coming out of COVID when there was so much freight that people could be a bit choosy. And now we're starting to see that conversation flip the other way, because now there isn't the boom of freight that there was before. So are you seeing that change? Are you seeing the attitude among your customers changing, or are you still sort of taking it the same way?
No, I can tell you my presentation hasn't changed. All that stuff is still in there. The reality is what I've seen coming out of COVID is that I actually think things have gotten better. I think that the general population has a much higher respect for what these guys and girls are doing. Maybe that's an unintended positive coming out of COVID, is that I do think there's a lot more respect for how hard their job is. And so I think things have gotten better, and no, haven't seen it flipping. There's no doubt the shippers have a lot more leverage than they did a year and a half ago right now, but I haven't seen that change, and it's not going to change coming out of my presentation, what I tell them either. So
interesting. Okay.
If I could jump in here.
Yeah.
Kyle, you do a lot to establish pride in the industry. So beyond your customer presentations, what else are you doing?
I mean, that's a lot. We've been involved with everything from, we do a lot of charity stuff. We'll start there. I mean, obviously, what can we do to promote our industry out in the public? For instance, neighborhood events, touch a truck events we've done in the past, going out to neighborhood parks to have let kids get into the trucks. We do a lot of stuff for the food bank. Houston Food Bank is a big partner of ours down here. Anything we can do to kind of, it sounds bad, but anything we can do to continue to humanize our drivers, because the reality is too often in our society these days, if a commercial comes on about truck driving in America, it's normally about some lawyer trying to attack us for how bad we are, right? And so it's really anything we can do to shed that positive light. We do TXTA and legislation, and we've had a driver on the national road team a couple years ago, which was a big deal for us, for a little old Jetco, on there with some big companies. So yeah, I mean, look, this is, I'm a big fan of giving back to our community, but part of that giving back is also we help create the narrative of who we are as a company and what we do as truck drivers. So it all goes hand in hand for sure.
Well, I tell you, reading the list of the charities that you're involved with, I was astounded. You get involved with so many things, and I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, whoever needs us. I mean, and we try to let our team, our team bring us ideas on things to do. And most recently, we're getting involved with a group called Texan by Nature, which is a big, conservation effort in the state. Not something that probably a lot of, don't think about that on the trucking company side, but the reality is that's where our industry is going, and we need to help continue to lead it down that path. And Texan by Nature is a great partner that we're just starting to work more and more with. But yeah, a lot of things with back to school drives. We work with the mayor's office. We were heavily involved during Hurricane Harvey with the governor's office helping. That was getting John boats out the day after the hurricane hit, and we were loading John boats onto flatbeds and getting them out into the neighborhoods to get people out. So yeah, anything we can do to help. You got to give back. This community in Texas, and that they've helped get us where we're at. Then you got to return that back to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And you have your drivers actively involved in all of those things too?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the drivers, I can tell you, we have drivers that take a lot of pride in doing like the back to school drive where we're stuffing, vans full of backpacks and then taking them into, the inner city Houston areas and giving them out. It's something that we've done through the mayor's office now for a decade. But absolutely, I mean, anything the drivers can do to help. We have drivers bring us ideas. Hey, we've got the neighborhood parade coming up. Would we consider donating one of our flatbeds to have people, ride on the parade on? We've done that kind of stuff. Obviously we cover the liability side of that, but we'll make it work, right? If our drivers are coming to us with ideas like that, more times than not, we can make something work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you also
Fantastic.
had a pretty extensive plan for managing natural disasters at the company. So it isn't really just sort of the charitable side of it, but you're also thinking about how you're going to continue operations with the business as well. So talk a little bit about how you plan for that and how you make sure that both your sort of operations and your drivers are taken care of there.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had a lot of experience with that down here in Houston. So it's kind of one of those things by necessity. You better learn how to deal with it and how to adjust. But yeah, I mean, look, business continuity is something that's very important when you live where we live, and obviously hurricane season can be devastating down here. Um, I go back to even prior to Hurricane Harvey, which was 2017, which is crazy to believe it's been that long. But things like making sure all of our team have laptops, making sure they have their tablets, making sure that they can be well taken care of wherever they're at, was always very important to us. But kind of when I think about natural disasters, and even I guess you can almost group COVID into that these days, and the lessons learned coming out of that is really just it's putting us in the shoes of our drivers and understanding their challenges that are coming from them. If they can't run loads, they can't earn a living, and you got to have that mindset when you're putting policies in place to make sure that your business is up and running, if at all possible, right? As long as it's safely able to run, that we can run. And I'll tell you, the physical safety is one thing, but really what we've learned a lot, uh, Hurricane Harvey probably being the first big, push in that direction was, man, the mental health of our team when these disasters hit is more important than, do you have your laptop? Much more important.
Mm-hmm.
And so, learning how we put together, charity drives for our drivers and employees that lost everything during Harvey. We had a significant amount of people that lost everything, and putting those people who were fortunate enough to not lose everything, we raised a lot of money through the company and helped distribute that out through our driver committee at the time. And really that psychological side, what we learned coming out of Harvey was key for us at COVID time too, because at COVID time it was, we know that when you're on the road, you may not have access to all these things that you're used to having access to at the truck stop. And so we were loading up. The fortunate thing is, like I said, we're mostly local and regional. So the vast majority of our guys are running back through our yards every night. And, something as simple as making sure that we had coolers stocked full of any kind of drink and food they needed, that they could get on their way out in the mornings, because you never know, and they never knew if they could stop somewhere on the road. Something that would seem that small really went a long way with our drivers. We had breakfast in almost every morning during that time period. Making sure we were psychologically preparing them for what their day might look like. And a lot of times that starts with a full stomach. Let's make sure you got a full stomach before you hit the road. And the other thing that has continued to evolve coming out of that, and also learning, kind of learning from some of the other members of your group here and some of the other benchmarking groups that I'm in, is just, it's also understanding that psychological side of our drivers and our team in general. Is you need someone who can focus on that, and it's one of those things where if everyone's in charge, no one's in charge type mentality. And coming out of COVID is really what kind of brought this mentality of Amanda's role in, having someone who the employee engagement and employee satisfaction is a big part of, what companies need to have going into the future. There's the stresses of our life, the stresses of a natural disaster, the stresses of COVID. The psychological side is just, again, it's much, much more than the physical part. And so, creating a role like Amanda's kind of came to me out of all of that. And Amanda and I have we've kind of built it together. I kind of told her at the time, I got these thoughts in my head, but we're going to build this together. And it's really kind of taken off. And now having someone that, really that's her focus on what can we do to make the lives of our drivers and our non-drivers better. What can we do to continue to make sure they're satisfied when they come to work every day. It's been a big part of our success. And I really think that's why it's a big reason why we're back on, the 2022 list this year.
So yeah,
23.
that is a bit of an uncommon role that you're in, Amanda. So talk to us a little bit about that and sort of how that relates to some of the other roles that we would typically see in a fleet.
Yeah, so before you guys announced the winners, I think there was an article that you guys put out that said like some of the top themes of those in the top 20. And one of them was new HR type roles. And I was like, yes. I was hoping we were talking about, kind of what I was doing. And I think that, again, what we have at Jetco as a smaller fleet, like, is just so cool, right? I'm starting to see more engagement roles again at the bigger level. But I think, having it at a smaller company and really being able to grow it from the ground up has really been a lot of fun for me. So, I think the role of engagement is kind of whatever we make it out to be. But I think that, like safety at Jetco, engagement really encompasses every department. And so I think, one of the things that make me a natural fit for this role is just because of my experience in the industry. I've done a lot of different roles and been involved, so I can see the operations side, I can see the safety side. I've never been a professional driver myself, but I've certainly worked with drivers throughout my career. And so kind of taking all of those, bits of knowledge, I guess, through the years has really helped me kind of hone in on, what we're trying to do at Jetco. And I think that, at first we kind of weren't sure, like Kyle said, exactly, where it's been going, but we've been doing some, really cool stuff. We started just recently a leadership training program for some, folks that we've identified as, future managers in the company, trying to really reinvigorate, our driver committee, things like that, reinvigorating the hiring process and things like that. And a lot of coaching. So I wrote down the word coaching as we were talking. Again, I think engagement is really like the phrase I hear right now is people ops, right? People operations. I think I really get to spend a lot of my time focusing on, the people operations side of the business and coaching, training, developing. And if nothing else, I'm a listener, and I'm able to listen and kind of, remain neutral, point out ideas that I might have. I've seen a lot in the industry. And so sometimes I think that I'm able to kind of look at things from maybe a different approach than others. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, if I might add, Mark, I've had people ask me before, how do you justify, a whole nother salary for this role? Isn't it just HR? And, my history with HR is most HR people are very black and white. They're compliance minded, like here's the law type deal. Whereas this role is much more, you got to be able to be the softer skills. You got to be able to kind of be in the middle. You got to be able to, it's not all black and white. I hate to say, but it can be gray at times when you're dealing with people. That's the nature of dealing with people, right? And I've seen, I've just seen in the past that, shoehorning a pure HR person into this kind of a role doesn't fit. And they've asked me, how do you measure the ROI? And for me, the ROI is measured on our retention. It's measured on, just the overall feel and the vibe when I walk around the office. And And it's hard to put a dollar amount on that. I mean, I could put a dollar amount on what our low turnover looks like, yes, but it's the same thing in the office as well. And just I'll give you a prime example. But Amanda was in the office a few weeks ago, and that, look, like you mentioned earlier, Mark, the industry is a little different than it was a year and a half ago. It's a little more stressful right now, right? Finding all that freight and making sure we're keeping our guys and girls busy. But the stress points are high, and that's where Amanda can come in and, with her knowledge of what's going on, but really just her soft skill set, someone in that role that can say, hey, Kyle, go get a putting green. Let's put a putting green in the office, and people can have a little competition and get away from their desk, and break the monotony and break the stress and, things like that may not always be thought about. And I know that, and then to your point, Amanda, I know a lot of the big guys, and they're doing more and more of this stuff, but I still think for our niche and what we do, it's still very, very, groundbreaking type mentality.
And on that note, a couple of the things that I read from the report, when your drivers are out on the road, every third night in the hotel, is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Which again, that's not a lot for us, right? Since our drivers aren't out a lot, but we do make sure that they know, absolutely, if you don't want to stay in your sleeper, you got the hotel. Yeah, absolutely.
And no vacation payouts? They have to take vacation time, get a break?
Yeah, so I mean, we do have PTO, sure. I mean, they have PTO.
Yep.
But again, our company drivers in general, they're local, so they're not over the road very much.
Yep.
But no, I mean, again, and all that. That's the thing about us, and going back to how we bring drivers in. People know from the day they get here what to expect. And again, we're obviously, we're open and honest with them as well. This goes back to Amanda and our lead recruiter that, look, here's how we do things, and here's how we've become successful. Here's how we have drivers who've been here for 20 years, but it doesn't work for everyone. And if it doesn't, that's fine. We wish you the best. And if that changes, let us know.
Perfect. Can we talk a little bit about how you do performance evaluations?
Sure.
Tell
So
us your process.
Yeah. So for years and years, we formally we do two a year with our drivers. Okay, so we'll have a mid-year and then kind of the end of the year type thing. Mm-hmm. But what I have really done with Jetco, and this goes for drivers and non-drivers, is I've tried to foster a culture of reviews need to be ongoing all the time. And what I have seen is while having the formal reviews is very necessary, I've seen too many people and companies say that, well, then I only really got to give feedback twice a year. And that's just not healthy either. People will slip into that mentality that, well, I got a review in 6 months. I'll tell them then. We foster a continuous feedback, continuous loop of information in and out. Again, driver, non-driver, but specifically speaking on the driver side, we have, like everyone, we have our group of, call it 8 or 10 different metrics that we're keeping track of for all of our drivers. And, in the past, we were handling that very manually and trying to combine them all together for a review. And now we've used Idelic. So now we're going with Idelic these days. And Amanda could probably speak better than I can, but Idelic has been a big part of not only helping pull all that stuff together, but when it comes to continuous constant feedback with Idelic, it's all there in real time. So all the time we can be giving our drivers feedback of, hey, things are going this direction or that direction. It's time to talk about it. So Amanda, do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Kyle said, they've been a really great partner of ours, and I think one of the things that's been really neat is we've been able to give them feedback about things that we've been wanting to see. So I had actually wanted to work with them for a long time, and finally, I got to be involved at Jetco again, like fulfilling these life goals of mine. But I think what's really interesting is as we started asking the why questions, they were able to say, oh, we've never thought about it from that perspective at the fleet level before, right? Or I would ask a question like, okay, how do I pull out, one departmental segment of our drivers and look at the data specifically to that department, right? So we're able to really kind of customize that data. And like Kyle said, I think that, training our office employees in how to use that software and coach and train our drivers, I think proactively has been really helpful for us. So, I think we hear at trucking companies in general, trucking safety accidents is very reactive, right? I've heard that constantly through the years. So I think looking at it from a scorecard and coaching, it's very proactive. We're not saying obviously we can prevent every accident incident, but we can certainly look at behaviors that we've identified that say, hey, it's time to come into the office, talk to our team, like let's figure out what's going on, and then let's get a plan so we're all in the same, plan in place about what to do going forward. So it's been super helpful for us.
Terrific.
Yeah, excellent. So I think that's going to bring us near the end. But just as we wrap up, any final thoughts on or final comments on things that you want people to know about how you do business and what makes you different?
Amanda, you want to start that?
Wow, that's such an open-ended question, Mark. I mean, I
and
love,
that is a cruel question.
and that is a
and of
cruel
course, I
question.
want you to summarize it all in like 3 sentences.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jetco is awesome. Like I'm caught off guard with the appropriate word to use, but I am truly proud of the work that we're doing. I think that again, being in the industry as long as I have seen a lot of bad, right? And so one of my passions, I think, in my day-to-day is really improving that employee experience. And so working with our drivers and office employees is really a unique part about what I do. And I love that, Kyle and the leadership at Jetco really back that up. I really do think, like Kyle said, we walk the walk, and talk the talk, and it's awesome to be a part of that.
Yeah, I agree. So our internal branding theme is called Driving to Perfection, D2P. And whenever, you can ask anyone in the company, what does D2P mean to them? And they're all going to come to a pretty close, tight answer on what driving to perfection means. And, I tell everyone, again, all the new hires that come in, I'll tell them, we are a company of best practices that we've brought together. We learn from other people. We don't pretend to be the smartest people in the room, which is why I'm involved in things like this and love doing these things, because I love learning from other companies that have developed things, and and how do we adapt that to our way of doing things. But at the same time, readily admitting we're not perfect. We have issues just like everyone, but when issues arise, I want to know that we handled them, swiftly and the right way. I'll tell them, if something goes wrong, I don't need to hear about that unless, it's something really bad. But I do want to hear if it wasn't taken care of. If we did not take care of something, that's what I wanted to hear. And, this year, we had, we kind of our theme this year, we do once a year, we do an annual meeting where the whole company comes together here on the property on a Saturday, and we have guest speakers and barbecue or fajitas, whatever. And our theme this year really is revolving around the team aspect. And that seems kind of vague, but my intent on that was knowing that we were coming into a year where maybe the freight market was going to be a little more challenged. I knew that we needed to re-hit that concept that, in sports, a lot of times they'll say the name on the front of the jersey, which is your team name, is more important than the name on the back, which is your individual last name. And so this year we had Jetco jerseys done, like baseball jerseys that had the Jetco on the front, and reiterating that, guys, look, we're in this together. We want people who understand that the team concept is more important than the individual, because if our team is performing, you're going to get rewarded. The individual will get awarded. And again, I'm very, very open and honest with all those people and say, look, if that's not how you how you roll, then that's fine. We will make it a nice, easy exit. But if you're at Jetco, you're going to be a part of understanding that this team is the important thing. And if you follow that, you're going to get the rewards as well. And so that's really been, the theme of this. We've lost very few drivers this year, despite, again, there's been some freight challenges, but it's getting better. But just the team atmosphere and the team, that mentality and my sports craziness background, they just fit perfect together for what I felt like we needed this year. And so everybody wears their jerseys proudly around the office and out in their truck. So it's pretty neat.
Beautiful. Well, I think that is a fantastic place to wrap it up. So thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us today about what you do, and look for this episode to be posted shortly.
Fantastic.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed this. Thank you.